Friends, if you want to watch super hit movie Alien vs. Predator in English, then you must like this video if you are visiting our channel for the first time. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Friends, in today's video, the movie we're going to talk about is called Alien vs. Predator. We will talk about what this movie is and where you can watch it. All the interesting facts about this movie. In today's video, I'm going to tell you. I am also going to give you all the information on which OT platform or on which satellite channel you will get to watch this movie. Also, we will talk in detail about the technical department, music department, pre-production filming, post-production budget, box office collection of this film. We will also talk about the story of this film, and I will also give you a small review of the story of this film. Apart from this, we will discuss about the facts of this film storyline, star cast, actors' performance in the film, and which character has played which role. That's why I request you friends to watch this video till the end. So let's start the video. Alien vs. Predator, stylized as AVP, Alien vs. Predator is a 2004 science fiction action horror film written and directed by Paul W.S. Anderson and starring Sanaa Lathan, Raoul Bova, Lance Henriksen, Ewan Bremner, Colin Salmon, and Tommy Flanagan. It is the first film installment of the Alien vs. Predator franchise, the fifth film in the Alien franchise, and third film of the Predator franchise, adapting a crossover bringing together the eponymous creatures of the Alien and Predator series, a concept which originated in a 1989 comic book written by Randy Stradley and Chris Warner. Anderson wrote the story, with the creators of the Alien franchise, Dan O'Bannon and Ronald Shusett, receiving additional story credit due to the incorporation of elements from the Alien series. And Anderson and Shane Salerno adapted the story into a screenplay. Their writing was influenced by Aztec mythology, the comic book series, and the writings of Eric von Däniken. In the film, scientists are caught in the crossfire of an ancient battle between aliens and predators as they attempt to escape a bygone pyramid. Alien vs. Predator was theatrically released on the 12th of August 2004. It received generally negative reviews and grossed $177.4 million worldwide against a production budget of $60 to $70 million. A direct sequel, Aliens vs. Predator Requiem, was released in 2007. Plot: a Predator ship arrives on Earth and uses a heating device to melt a hole in Antarctic ice. Meanwhile, a satellite detects the heat bloom beneath Buvatoya, an island about 1,000 miles, 1,600 kilometers off the coast of Antarctica. Wealthy industrialist Charles Weiland discovers through thermal imaging that there is a pyramid buried 2,000 feet, 610 meters beneath the ice. He assembles a team of experts to investigate, including archaeologists, linguists, mercenaries, and a mountaineering guide named Lex Woods. Terminally ill, Weiland desires to claim the discovery in his name. When the team arrives at the abandoned whaling station, they find a newly made tunnel running directly from the ice's surface toward the pyramid beneath. The team descends the tunnel and begins to explore the pyramid, soon finding evidence of an ancient civilization and what appears to be a sacrificial chamber filled with human skeletons that all have ruptured rib cages. Through translation of the pyramid's hieroglyphs, Lex and Sebastian learn that the predators have been visiting Earth for millennia. They taught the early human civilization how to build pyramids and were worshipped as gods. Once a century, they visit Earth to take part in a rite of passage by which several humans sacrifice themselves as hosts for the xenomorphs, creating the ultimate prey for the predators to hunt. As a fail-safe, if overwhelmed, the predators would activate a self-destruct device to eliminate the xenomorphs. They deduce that the predators lured them into the pyramid to use as a sacrifice. Lex and Sebastian decide that the predators must be allowed to succeed so that the xenomorphs do not escape to the surface. Sebastian is captured by a xenomorph and Lex returns the blaster to Scar. They are attacked by a xenomorph and Lex manages to kill it. Impressed, Scar uses parts of a dead xenomorph to fashion weapons for Lex, and the two form an alliance. Lex finds Sebastian, who has become the host of a xenomorph. She mercy kills him, but the xenomorph queen is freed from her restraints and, along with the other xenomorphs, begins pursuing Lex and Scar. Scar detaches and uses a bomb in his wrist module to destroy the pyramid and the remaining xenomorphs and their eggs. Lex and Scar reach the surface, and Scar uses acidic xenomorph blood to mark Lex with the xenomorph hunter symbol. However, the xenomorph queen reappears and attacks. Scar is fatally wounded, but they defeat the queen by hooking her chains to a water tank and pushing her over a cliff so that she sinks to the ocean floor under the tank's weight. A Predator spaceship appears, and its crew retrieves its fallen comrade. An elder Predator sees the hunter's scar on Lex's face and presents her with a spear as a gift as the spaceship departs. Lex walks over to a snowcat and leaves the area. On the Predator spaceship, Scar's body lies at rest when a Predalien chestburster erupts from his chest. Cast? See also List of Alien vs. Predator characters. Sanaa Lathan as Alexa Lex Woods, an experienced guide who spent several seasons exploring Arctic and Antarctic environments. She is loosely based on Machiko Noguchi from the 4-book series. Raoul Bova as Professor Sebastian de Rosa, an Italian archaeologist and member of the exploration team who is able to translate the pyramid's hieroglyphs. Lance Henriksen as Charles Bishop Weiland, the billionaire head of Weiland Corporation and its subsidiary Weiland Industries, who organizes the expedition. Ewan Bremner as Dr. Graham Miller, a Scottish chemical engineer, the main scientist of the exploration team. Colin Salmon as Maxwell Stafford, assistant to Mr. Weiland and former British Special Forces officer. Tommy Flanagan as Mark Verheiden, a member of the armed escort that accompanies the exploration team. Karsten Norgard as Rustin Quinn, head of the drilling team. Joseph Rye as Joe Connors, a member of the armed escort that accompanies the exploration team. Agathe de la Boulay as Adele Rousseau, a member of the armed escort that accompanies the exploration team. Sam Troughton as Thomas Parks, the second archaeologist of the exploration team, DeRosa's assistant. Peter Yackel as Stone, a member of the armed escort that accompanies the exploration team. Liz May Brees, So, Alien is a good idea that will probably never happen. Screenwriter Peter Briggs created the original spec screenplay in 1990 to 1991, which was based on the first comic series. In 1991, he successfully pitched the concept to 20th Century Fox, who owned the film franchises, although the company did not move forward with the project until 2002. A video game produced by Capcom as a tie-in to the unmade film saw independent release in 1994. The project was delayed chiefly because the studio was working on Alien Resurrection. A draft penned by James DeMonico and Kevin Fox, described as pretty much word for word like the Dark Horse comic book, was rejected by producer John Davis, who hoped to give the film an original approach by setting it on Earth. As there were 6 producers between the film franchises, Davis had difficulty securing the rights as the producers were worried about a film featuring the 2 creatures. Paul W.S. Anderson pitched Davis a story he worked on for 8 years, adapting the Machiko Noguchi series, and showed him concept art created by Randy Bowen. Impressed with Anderson's idea, Davis thought the story was like Jaws in that it just drew you in. Anderson started to work on the film after completing the script for Resident Evil Apocalypse, with Shane Salerno co-writing. Salerno spent 6 months writing the shooting script, finished its development, and stayed on for revisions throughout the film's production. Dan O'Bannon and Ronald Shusett received story credit on the film based on elements from their work on the original Alien, story and setting. Early reports claimed the story was about humans who tried to lure predators with alien eggs, although the idea was scrapped. Influenced by the work of Eric von Däniken, Anderson researched von Däniken's theories on how he believed early civilizations were able to construct massive pyramids with the help of aliens, an idea long debunked and based on misinterpretations of Aztec mythology. Anderson wove these ideas into Alien vs. Predator, describing a scenario in which predators taught ancient humans to build pyramids and used Earth for rite of passage rituals every 100 years in which they would hunt aliens. To explain how these ancient civilizations disappeared without a trace, Anderson came up with the idea that the predators, if overwhelmed by the aliens, would use their self-destruct weapons to kill everything in the area. H.P. Lovecraft's novella At the Mountains of Madness, 1931, served as an inspiration for the film, and several elements of the Aliens vs. Predator comic series were included. Anderson's initial script called for 5 predators to appear in the film, although the number was later reduced to 3. As Alien vs. Predator was intended to be a sequel to the Predator films and prequel to the Alien series, Anderson was cautious of contradicting continuity in the franchises. He chose to set the film on the remote Norwegian Antarctic island of Bouvet, commenting, "It's definitely the most hostile environment on Earth and probably the closest to an alien surface you can get." Anderson thought that setting the film in an urban environment like New York City would break continuity with the Alien series, as the protagonist, Ellen Ripley, had no knowledge the creatures existed. You can't have an alien running around the city now because it would have been written up and everyone will know about it. So there's nothing in this movie that contradicts anything that already exists. After the film's release, James Muller, a writer who alleged that the screenplay was copied from one he had written 8 years earlier, sued the studio, the production company, and Anderson for copyright infringement. In 2011, federal judge Denny Chin for the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York dismissed the case, holding that no reasonable jury was likely to find anything more than coincidental similarity between the 2 scripts besides elements so common to the genre as not to be copyrightable. Finding Muller's suit frivolous and objectively unreasonable, Chin also awarded Fox $40,000 in legal fees. Casting. The first actor to be cast for Alien vs. Predator was Lance Henriksen, who played the character Bishop in Aliens and Alien 3. Although the Alien films are set hundreds of years in the future, Anderson wanted to keep continuity with the series by including a familiar actor. Henriksen plays billionaire and self-taught engineer Charles Bishop Wayland, a character that ties in with the Weyland-Yutani Corporation as the original founder and CEO of Weyland Industries. According to Anderson, Weiland becomes known for the discovery of the pyramid, and as a result, the Weiland-Yutani Corporation models the Bishop android in the Alien films after him. When the Bishop android is created in 150 years' time, it's created with the face of the creator. It's kind of like Microsoft building an android in 100 years' time that has the face of Bill Gates. Anderson opted for a European cast including Italian actor Raoul Bova, Ewan Bremner from Scotland, and English actor Colin Salmon. Producer Davis said, "There's a truly international flavor to the cast and gives the film a lot of character." Several hundred actresses attended the auditions to be cast as the film's heroine Alexa Woods, loosely based on the comic and novel protagonist Machiko Noguchi. Sanaa Lathan was selected, and 1 week later she flew to Prague to begin filming. The filmmakers knew there would be comparisons to Alien heroine Ellen Ripley and did not want a clone of the character, but wanted to make her similar while adding something different. Anderson reported in an interview that California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger was willing to reprise his role as Major Alan Dutch Schaefer from Predator in a short cameo appearance if he lost the 2003 recall election on condition that the filming should take place at his residence. Schwarzenegger, however, won the election with 48.58% of the votes and was unavailable to participate in Alien vs. Predator. Actress Sigourney Weaver, who starred as Ellen Ripley in the Alien series, said she was happy not to be in the film, as a possible crossover was the reason I wanted my character to die in the first place, and thought the concept sounded awful. Filming and set designs. Production began in late 2003 at Barrandov Studios in Prague, Czech Republic, where most of the filming took place. Production designer Richard Bridgeland was in charge of sets, props, and vehicles, based on early concept art Anderson had created to give a broad direction of how things would look. 25 to 30 life-size sets were constructed at Barrandov Studios, many of which were interiors of the pyramid. The pyramid's carvings, sculptures, and hieroglyphs were influenced by Egyptian, Cambodian, and Aztec civilizations, while the regular shifting of the pyramid's rooms was meant to evoke a sense of claustrophobia, similar to the original Alien film. According to Anderson, if he was to build the sets in Los Angeles, they would have cost $20 million. However, in Prague, they cost $2 million, an important factor when the film's budget was less than $50 million. Third-scale miniatures several meters in height were created to give the film the effect of realism, rather than relying on computer-generated imagery, CGI. For the whaling station miniatures and life-sized sets, over 700 bags of artificial snow were used, roughly 15 to 20 tons. A 4.5-meter miniature of an icebreaker with working lights and a mechanical moving radar was created, costing almost $37,000 and taking 10 weeks to create. Visual effects producer Arthur Windus claimed miniatures were beneficial in the filming process. With computer graphics, you need to spend a lot of time making it real. With a miniature, you shoot it and it's there. A scale 25-meter miniature of the whaling station was created in several months. It was designed so the model could be collapsed and then reconstructed, which proved beneficial for a 6-second shot which required a reshoot. Effects and creatures. Special effects company Amalgamated Dynamics Incorporated, ADI, was hired for the film, having previously worked on Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection. Visual special effects producers Arthur Windus and John Bruno were in charge of the project, which contained 400 effects shots. ADI founders Alec Gillis, Tom Woodruff Jr., and members of their company began designing costumes, miniatures, and effects in June 2003. For 5 months, the creatures were redesigned. The Predator's wrist blades being extended roughly 4 times longer than those in the Predator films, and a larger mechanical plasma caster was created for the Scar Predator. The basic shape of the Predator mask was kept, although technical details were added and each Predator was given a unique mask to distinguish them from each other. These masks were created using clay, which was used to form molds to create fiberglass copies. These copies were painted to give a weathered look, which Woodruff claims is what the Predator is all about. A hydraulic alien puppet was created so ADI would be able to make movements faster and give the alien a slimline and skeletal appearance rather than using an actor in a suit. The puppet required 6 people to run it, 1 for the head and body, 2 for the arms, and a 6th to make sure the signals were reaching the computer. Movements were recorded in the computer so that puppeteers would be able to repeat moves that Anderson liked. The puppet was used in 6 shots, including the fight scene with the Predator, which took 1 month to film. The crew tried to keep CGI use to a minimum, as Anderson said people in suits and puppets are scarier than CGI monsters as they are there in the frame. Roughly 70% of scenes were created using suits, puppets, and miniatures. The Alien Queen was filmed using 3 variations, a 4.8-meter practical version, a 1.2-meter puppet, and a computer-generated version. The practical version required 12 puppeteers to operate, and CGI tails were added to the aliens and the Queen as they were difficult to animate using puppetry. The Queen alien's inner mouth was automated, though, and was powered by a system of hydraulics. Anderson praised Alien director Ridley Scott's and Predator director John McTiernan's abilities at building suspense by not showing the creatures until late in the film, something Anderson wanted to accomplish with Alien vs. Predator. Yes, we make you wait 45 minutes, but once it goes off, from there until the end of the movie, it's fucking relentless. Music. Main article, Alien vs. Predator. Austrian composer Harald Kloser was hired to create the film's score. After completing the score for The Day After Tomorrow, Kloser was chosen by Anderson as he is a fan of the franchises. It was recorded in London and was primarily orchestral, as Anderson commented, "This is a terrifying movie and it needs a terrifying classic movie score to go with it. At the same time, it's got huge action, so it needs that kind of proper orchestral support." The score album was released on iTunes on the 9th of August 2004 and on CD on the 31st of August 2004 and received mixed reviews. James Christopher Monger of AllMusic thought Kloser introduced electronic elements well and called Alien vs. Predator main theme a particularly striking and serves as a continuous creative source for the composer to dip his baton in. Mike Brennan of Soundtrack, however, said it lacks the ingenuity of the previous trilogy, Alien and the Predator scores, which all shared a strong sense of rhythm in place of thematic content. Kloser throws in some interesting percussion cues, Antarctica and Down the Tunnel, but more as a sound effect than a consistent motif. John Fallon of JoBlo.com compared it to character development in the film, too generic to completely engage or leave a permanent impression. Release. Home media. Alien vs. Predator was released on VHS, DVD, and PSP UMD movies in North America on the 25th of January 2005. The DVD contained 2 audio commentaries. The first featured Paul W.S. Anderson, Lance Henriksen, and Sanaa Lathan, while the second included special effects supervisor John Bruno and ADI founders Alec Gillis and Tom Woodruff. A 25-minute making-of, featurette, and a Dark Horse AVP comic cover gallery were included in the special features along with 3 deleted scenes from the film. On release, Alien vs. Predator debuted at number 1 on the top DVD sales and top video rental charts in North America. A 2-disc Extreme Edition was released on the 7th of March 2005, featuring behind-the-scenes footage of the film. An unrated edition was released on the 22nd of November 2005, containing the same special features as the Extreme Edition, as well as an extra 8 minutes of footage in the film. John J. Puccio of DVD Town remarked that the extra footage contained a few more shots of blood, gore, guts, and slime to spice things up, and tiny bits of connecting matter to help us follow the storyline better. But none of it amounts to much. Reception. Box office. Alien vs. Predator grossed $80.3 million in the United States and Canada and $97.1 million in other territories for a worldwide total of $177.4 million. Deadline Hollywood reported the film was extremely profitable for the studio. The film was released in North America on August 13, 2004 in 3,395 theaters and grossed $38.2 million in its opening weekend, an average of $11,278 per venue, finishing first at the box office. The film spent 16 weeks in theaters. It grossed $9 million in the United Kingdom, $16 million in Japan, and $8 million in Germany. It ranks third behind Aliens and Prometheus at the domestic box office, and at the time was the highest-grossing film of both the Predator and Alien franchises, and to date is the third best total behind Romulus and Prometheus. Critical response. On the review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, 22% of 146 critics' reviews are positive, with an average rating of 4.3/10. The website's consensus reads, "Gore without scares and cardboard cutout characters make this Clash of the Monsters a dull sit." On Metacritic, the film has a weighted average score of 29 out of 100, based on 21 critics, indicating generally unfavorable reviews. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of B on an A+ to F scale. Rick Kisenak of Film Threat praised the film, stating, "For a big dumb production about a movie monster smackdown, Alien vs. Predator is a surprisingly good time." Ian Gray of the Orlando Weekly felt, "Anderson clearly relished making this wonderful, utterly silly film. His heart shows in every drip of slime." Stacey Lane Wilson of Horror.com called it a pretty movie to look at with its grandiose sets and top-notch creature FX, but it's a lot like Anderson's previous works in that it's all facade and no foundation. Gary Dowell of the Dallas Morning News called the film a transparent attempt to jumpstart two rundown franchises. Ed Halter of The Village Voice described the film's lighting for fight sequences as black on black in blackness, while Ty Burr of the Boston Globe felt the lighting left the audience in the dark. Other media. Sequel. Main article Aliens vs. Predator Requiem. A sequel titled Aliens vs. Predator Requiem was released in December 2007, 62. Related film. Main article The Predator film. A fourth Predator film titled The Predator was released in September 2018, featuring Lex Wood's xenomorph bone spear from the conclusion of Alien vs. Predator on display at Project Stargazer. Alien vs. Predator, also known as Aliens vs. Predator and AVP, is a science fiction action horror media franchise created by comic book writers Randy Stradley and Chris Warner. The series is a crossover between and part of the larger Alien and Predator franchises, depicting the two species, xenomorph, alien, and Yautja, predator, as being in conflict with one another. It began as a comic book series in 1989, before being adapted into a video game series in the 1990s. Produced and distributed by 20th Century Fox, the film series began with Alien vs. Predator, 2004, directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, and was followed by Aliens vs. Predator, Requiem, 2007, directed by the brothers Strauss, and the development of a third film has been delayed indefinitely. The series has led to numerous novels, comics, and video game spin-offs such as Aliens vs. Predator, released in 2010. Premise: the Alien vs. Predator franchise depicts a series of deadly encounters between humanity and other extraterrestrial species. The aliens, ferocious endoparasitoid creatures, and the predators, technologically advanced warriors that hunt for personal sport and honor. Predominantly transpiring in the present day of the 21st century, with both films taking place in 2004 and the second film taking place immediately after the first, the series acts as a spin-off and prequel to the Alien franchise, portraying humankind's encounters with alien species and how they helped shape human civilization, technology, and weaponry, such as the colonial Marines, the United America, the Nostromo, and those involved with the Weyland-Yutani Corporation that is seen in the Alien franchise of the future. Throughout the series, audiences see the involvement of the forerunners of the Weyland-Yutani Corporation in the history of these alien creatures as Weyland Industries, headed by Charles Bishop Weyland, one of the many within the Weyland family, who seeks immortality and the advancement of the company, whereas the Yutani Corporation, headed by Ms. Yutani, seeks to study creatures from space and acquire their technology and weaponry for organized warfare. Amidst the actions of the two corporations, human characters are forced to survive infestations of xenomorphs and clashes with Yautjas, eventually leading to the future merger between the two companies and the development of interstellar travel, and eventually wars with other races from space and other advanced technologies. This also leads to the future events of the Alien franchise. Background: according to Anderson, Weyland becomes known for the discovery of the pyramid, and as a result, the Weyland-Yutani Corporation models the Bishop android in the Alien films after him. When the Bishop android is created in 150 years' time, it's created with the face of the creator. It's kind of like Microsoft building an Android in 100 years' time that has the face of Bill Gates. The brothers Strauss further stated how the ending of their sequel built further upon establishing the future of the universe by having the Predator technology acquired by Yutani Corporation, and by extension Project Stargazer of the Predator films, act as the impetus for the development of advanced technologies such as FTL, faster-than-light travel, drives fitted aboard spaceships. The legacy of the shared universe has also shown itself in later films. In the 2010 film Predators, when the group of main protagonists enters the Predators' camp, there is a brief view of an alien skull on the ground, as well as the lower jaw of an alien on the helmet of the Berserker Predator, referring to a similar moment from Predator 2 when an alien skull is seen in the trophy room of the Predator spaceship. Furthermore, the 2018 film titled The Predator featured several references to Alien vs. Predator, such as the shurikens, mask designs, and Alexa's spear, which the Predator named Scar, made out of an alien tail. An alternate ending for the Predator displaying a Weyland-Yutani Corp pod containing Ripley and Newt from Aliens, both played by Brianna Watkins, wearing a Weyland-Yutani breathing apparatus shaped like an alien facehugger, was also intended to further connect to the Alien films. Alien vs. Predator 2004. Main article: Alien vs. Predator film. In 2004, a Predator mothership arrives in Earth's orbit to draw humans to an ancient Predator training ground on Buvatoya, an island about 1,000 miles north of Antarctica. A buried pyramid giving off a heat bloom attracts a group of explorers led by billionaire and self-taught engineer Charles Bishop Weyland, Lance Henriksen, the original founder and CEO of Weyland Industries, who unknowingly activates an alien egg production line as a hibernating alien queen, is awakened within the pyramid. 3 predators descend onto the planet and enter the structure, killing all humans in their way with the intention of hunting the newly formed aliens, while the scattered explorers are captured alive by aliens and implanted with embryos. 2 predators die in the ensuing battle with an alien, while the third allies itself with the lone surviving human. Alexa Lex Woods, Sanaa Lathan, while making their way out of the pyramid as it is destroyed by the predator's wrist bomb, and eventually does battle with the escaped alien queen on the surface. The queen is defeated by being dragged down by a water tower into the dark depths of the frozen sea, but not before she fatally wounds the last predator. The orbiting predator mothership uncloaks and the crew retrieves the fallen predator. A predator elder gives Lex a spear as a sign of respect and then departs. Once in orbit, it is revealed that an alien chestburster was present within the corpse, thus a Predalien hybrid is born. Aliens vs. Predator Requiem 2007. Main article: Aliens vs. Predator Requiem. Set immediately after the events of the previous film, the Predalien hybrid aboard the Predator scout ship, having just separated from the mothership shown in the previous film, has grown to full adult size and sets about killing the predators aboard the ship, causing it to crash in the small town of Gunnison, Colorado. The last surviving predator activates a distress beacon containing a video recording of the Predalien, which is received by a veteran predator on the predator homeworld who sets off towards Earth to clean up the infestation. When it arrives, the predator tracks the aliens into a section of the sewer below the town. He removes evidence of their presence as he moves along using a corrosive blue liquid and uses a laser net to try to contain the creatures, but the aliens still manage to escape into the town above. The predator fashions a plasma pistol from its remaining plasma caster and hunts aliens all across town, accidentally cutting the power to the town in the process. During a confrontation with human survivors, the predator loses its plasma pistol. The predator then fights the Predalien single-handedly, and the two mortally wound one another just as the U.S. Air Force drops a tactical nuclear bomb on the town, incinerating both combatants along with the Predalien's warriors and hive, as well as the few remaining humans in the town. The salvaged plasma pistol is then taken to a Miss Yutani of the Yutani Corporation, foreshadowing an advancement in technology leading to the future events of the Alien films. Colin and Greg Strauss were adamant that they wanted to develop Alien vs. Predator 3 during the production of Aliens vs. Predator Requiem, They essentially sought to make an AVP film in space and set in the future, but by the time they were hired, 20th Century Fox had already decided to go with Salerno's script set on Earth. They incorporated elements of their ideas into the second film, such as the Predator home planet. In 2008, an anonymous source over at 20th Century Fox got in touch with us over the weekend to relay the news. Another Aliens vs. Predator sequel is a certainty at this point. If you recall, the brothers Strauss, who helmed the Christmas release Aliens vs. Predator Requiem, stated Fox was going to take a wait-and-see approach to a third chapter, furthermore that the story would have to continue in space. On October 28, 2010, IO9 published an exclusive interview with the brothers Strauss in which they revealed that Alien vs. Predator 3 would have led directly into Alien. Greg Strauss stated that the original ending for AVPR that we pitched them ended up on the Alien Homeward, and actually going from the Predator gun that you see at the end, it was going to transition from that gun to a logo of a Weyland-Yutani spaceship that was heading to an alien planet. And then we were actually going to cut down to the surface of the alien planet, and you were going to see a hunt going on. It was going to be a whole tribe of predators going against this creature that we called King Alien. It's this huge, giant, winged alien thing. And that was going to be the lead-in to show that the fact that the Predator gun, at the end of AVPR, is the impetus of all the technological advancements that allowed humans to travel in space, which leads up to the Alien timeline. When asked about the ending sequence of Aliens vs. Predator Requiem, that the Predator weapon handed to Miss Yutani would lead to humans developing advanced space travel technology, Greg stated, "That was the idea. They never got any of the equipment from the first Predators. It's the first time they ever received any intact working technology left over, so they could take that and reverse engineer, figure out what the power source was. All of those things. And in theory, that would enable that company to make massive advancements in technology and dominate the space industry. That was the whole idea, was to literally continue from Miss Yutani getting the gun and then cut to 50 years in the future. And there's spaceships now. We've made a quantum leap in space travel. That was going to set up the ending, which would then set up what AVP was going to be, which would take place 100 years in the future. That was kind of the plan. Liam O'Donnell, who worked as a visual effects consultant on Requiem, wrote a script treatment for AVP3 during the production of Requiem, which was set in South Africa about 50 years in the future when global warming had melted the ice caps and releasing the alien queen from Antarctica, featuring the merger and global rule of the Weyland-Yutani Corporation and their development of interstellar travel based on the recovered Predator technology from Gunnison. In 2015, having worked on the special effects of Aliens vs. Predator, Requiem, VFX makeup artist David Woodruff, the son of Tom Woodruff who worked on both the Alien and Terminator franchises, participated in an interview with the Terminator fans, and when asked about the situation of a third chapter in the AVP trilogy, he stated, "I haven't heard anything about a third installment, not even rumors. This Neil Blomkamp project is the first possibility I've seen or heard of another Alien film, and I'm all about it. I know the guys at Amalgamated Dynamics are pushing for something like this too. It's time." In 2015, during the London Film and Comic Con, Sigourney Weaver stated that she asked to have Ripley killed in Alien 3 because she knew that Fox were moving forward with Alien vs. Predator. Peter Briggs, writer of The Hunt, Alien vs. Predator, responded by praising all films in the franchise and pointing out that the AVP films were more successful than Weaver's last two Alien films, and noting that there's a terrific Alien vs. Predator movie still to be made by someone. It just hasn't happened yet. In mid-2018, Shane Black, the director of The Predator, tweeted his belief that a third Alien vs. Predator can still happen, indicating the studio's interest in both franchises. A comicbookrumors.com article from July suggested Fox may attempt an AVP cinematic universe after Ridley Scott finishes making the Alien prequels, after which Fox considered a soft reboot to the Alien series with new original characters, a new setting, and new timeline, which the same article also suggested, if it were to happen, could potentially take place within the same continuity as the Predator films and AVP films. Noting Predators featured an alien skull cameo, along with other references to aliens, and Lex Wood's xenomorph tail spear from Alien vs. Predator make appearance in The Predator. Alternate endings produced for The Predator displaying a Weyland-Yutani corp pod containing Ripley and Newt, both played by Brianna Watkins, wearing a Weyland-Yutani breathing apparatus shaped like an alien facehugger was also intended to further connect to the Alien films. In 2020, Alex Litvak, the co-writer of Predators, revealed the original script for the film's canceled sequel, which would feature the Colonial Marines from Alienzyme. In 2024, while promoting Alien Romulus, the film's director Fede Alvarez expressed interest in co-directing an Alien vs. Predator film with Dan Trachtenberg, the director of Prey, unreleased animated series, Aliens vs. Predator Annihilation. In May 2023, Alien Day founder Josh Izzo revealed that 10 episodes of a fully completed Alien vs. Predator anime series had been completed at 20th Century Fox, intended for a Netflix release prior to its acquisition by Disney, had been produced by Eric Calderon and Dave Baker, and directed by Shinji Aramaki, but was yet to see official release from the Disney Vault, despite completion. Originally developed as an adaptation of Dark Horse Comics, the Machiko Noguchi saga, with Izzo using the comic as the basis for storyboards in his pitch, the series was redeveloped by Aramaki as a deep future, story set years after the events of Alien Resurrection, told from the perspective of a Yautja clan, including a cyborg and a bone weapon-wielding warrior named Bone, as they hunt down xenomorphs. The unreleased anime series was revealed to be titled Aliens vs. Predator Annihilation. Cast and crew, principal cast, main article, list of Alien vs. Predator characters. Key, a V indicates the actor or actress lent only his or her voice for his or her film character. A C indicates a cameo appearance. A dark gray cell indicates the character Dubuque is not in the installment. Aliens vs. Predator Requiem is not so much a movie as much as it is a series of blurs and shapes moving quickly across a screen. People might enjoy it more if it were run out of focus, because then they might be able to blame shoddy theater management for hiring an inept projectionist, instead of realizing they just threw down too much money. Anything over $1 is too much in this case, by the way. 2. Watch a movie by people who don't know how to make a movie. There's not a specific element of this movie I especially hate. It's kind of a collective thing. The characters are less than cardboard cutouts, existing solely to be killed after spouting a line or two of cliches. The creatures, once genuinely scary, the aliens, or sort of cool, the predators, are reduced to screeching blurs or barely lit silhouettes that are not scary, cool, or in a lot of cases, even visible. Speaking of bad lighting, the whole movie seems to have been lit by lighting bug behind a foggy window. And don't get me started on the editing, which makes it impossible not only to follow the action, but also to realize that there is anything resembling action happening on screen. There's a ship resembling a frog orbiting Earth. It's full of predators, those dreadlocked hunters of men and other things, and one of them has an alien, those phallic monsters designed by H.R. Giger, that bite, rip, and bleed acid, pop out of its chest. Remember this if you can, because there will eventually be a predator-alien hybrid, a predin, running around. The predators on board aren't exactly wise with their heavy-impact weapons while flying in a delicate vessel that separates them from the vacuum of space, and the ship crashes into the woods where a hunter and his son find the downed craft. You might think the kid will need therapy after watching his dad's arm burned off by acid and his dad's face assaulted by a face-hugging alien, but that's only you realize the kid's boned too. That's when we get introduced to the seemingly unending bevy of expendable characters. There's Dallas, Stephen Pasquale, who hangs out with the local sheriff, John Ortiz, and his brother Ricky, Johnny Lewis, who has a crush on or once dated Jessie, Kristen Hager. She has friends, too, but they're obviously dead from the start. So a big head honcho predator sees the security footage from the crashed ship and goes to Earth to find the aliens that have managed to escape. He wanders around the dense forest for a while, and directors, the Strauss brothers, Colin and Greg, fill the frame with lots of trees. Lots and lots of trees. So many trees, we can't see anything going on. They do a long, tedious pan up a tall tree twice, and we see the predator playing around with his gadgets in close-up. There are lots of scenes of the predator playing with his junk, which is a lot more boring and less disturbing than it sounds. It's all in close-up. We have no clue what's happening, and it's actually relatively nice compared to those people with whom we have to spend most of the time. In addition to those first idiots, there's Kelly, Rako Aylesworth, who's on leave to spend time with her husband and daughter. Kelly is meant to be the Ripley of this installment. But the big question is whether or not the Army will cover the costs of her daughter's lifelong need for therapy. There are some other people, but they'll be dead in their first or second scene. It's best not to get attached to them. See, the movie has an open hatred for people, especially the audience. The dialogue is a cliché-o-rama, clearly written by some kind of script-generating software or a room full of action movie-obsessed monkeys, but credited to Shane Salerno, and in one particularly hilarious scene, the dialogue consists of 5 of these generic chestnuts in a row. People are dying, the National Guard will be here soon, not soon enough, I can't believe I'm doing this, and this plan is stupid, let's leave town. You might think I'm exaggerating, and I wish I were. Also confusing is the line, let's hope we're both wrong, which, given the context that the speaker and the receiver are looking for helicopters with which to rescue the people with them, means that the person hopes there are no helicopters and all of them die. Honestly, I'd be fine with that scenario. Once we leave the forest, we get to watch the people, the aliens, the predators, and the alien-predator hybrid, the alienator, stalk around a sewer, a power plant, a dingy locker room, a hospital in which all the power has gone out, and just so your grimy, indecipherable visual experience is complete, a rooftop at night in the rain. The fights are nonsensically filmed, and there's a single scene in a maternity ward that turns the movie from being mean to being just downright awful for misanthropy's sake. Aliens vs. Predator Requiem also has a climax in which characters outrun a nuclear blast in a helicopter, and it doesn't even have the decency to end there. I, on the other hand, will. Alien vs. Predator Requiem. Review. I despise this movie. Genuinely. Wholeheartedly. There isn't a single redeeming quality about Alien vs. Predator Requiem that I can acknowledge that makes watching this abomination of a film worth watching. Maybe the fact that it's only 90 minutes? No, not even that. This isn't so bad it's good. This is distasteful garbage, masquerading as edgy for the sake of being edgy. Everything about this 2007 sequel completely falls on its face, from the abysmal lighting, headache-worthy editing, and nonsensical story, to one of the most annoying, pointless cast of characters that I've ever seen. There is nothing to recommend here, and I'll explain why. Buckle up, because I have nothing good to say about Requiem. After the events of the first film, Scar, the Yautja that sacrificed himself to defeat the xenomorph queen, is brought onto the Predator ship and is about to be shipped back for burial when a xenomorph, going by the distinction Predalien, bursts out of its chest. This creature sends the ship off course, crashing in the woods of Gunnison, Colorado, where the Predalien and facehuggers on board begin their infestation of the town's residents. The identities of these residents are honestly not that important, but what is important is the Yautja sent after this xenomorph horde, Wolf. Armed to the teeth with weapons and devices, Wolf tracks down the Predalien, no matter how many humans or xenomorphs he's forced to carve his way through. If only we could see it. Alien vs. Predator Requiem dies on the vine thanks to absolutely dreadful lighting. Truly incompetent stuff. Time and time again, I see people talking about lighting on social media and how modern media doesn't have good lighting. To that, I say that if you want to see what bad lighting and set design truly looks like, take a good long look at this absolute eyesore of a movie. Despite getting more Predator and Alien-based action and screen time, it all comes crashing down when you cannot see any of it. When the best looks at your creature designs, which do look good from a design standpoint, can be found in the behind-the-scenes photos from photographers on the set, you know there's an issue. Characters? What characters? All I see are annoying, disposable stand-ins for the meat puppets xenomorphs and the Yautja love to shred. You have 10 or so named characters in this film, but is anything about them interesting? Or how about relevant to the plot in any way? Not only is the acting uninspired and downright bad from everybody, but the writing comes off as something you'd find from the CW channel, like Riverdale or some garbage like that. You have the two brothers, the bullies, the cop, the everyday family, and the girl whose only purpose is to appeal to the male demographic, made clear by a gratuitous body shot by a pool. And most of them die thanks to the nuking of their town anyway. What was the point? I get an icky feeling from this movie, you know? I draw the line at child characters getting face-hugged and witnessing a chest-burster come out of them. Same with the Predalien injecting a pregnant woman with xenomorph saliva via the mouth and causing her belly to explode with baby aliens. And it's strange because I'm not usually one to draw lines when it comes to movies. One of my favorite horror films is Terrifier 2, and that movie has the most gruesome deaths of any slasher for the 2020s. Here it comes off as purely for shock value and just gross. Never do I want to watch this movie again. And neither should you. Don't watch Alien vs. Predator Requiem. No amount of xenomorph or yautja screen time is worth sitting through a film this boring, ugly-looking, and distasteful. When it comes to looking at Alien and even Predator, this easily the bottom of the barrel, worst of the worst of either franchise. An unholy offspring that would give the Predalien a run for its money. I truly, sincerely hope I never have to watch this movie again. Watch anything else. Go see Alien. Romulus, because while that film isn't perfect, it's Citizen Kane compared to this dreadful experience. I would rather watch The Room 10 times over than witness whatever the hell this was. When it comes to Predators versus Aliens, I always find myself rooting for the Predators. We can recognize something in them, can't we? For instance, their similarity to Earth's own hot but dim guys, sexy until they open their big mouths. And Predators seem less of a threat to humanity. Partly a case of my enemy's enemy is my friend, and partly as predator kills of humans, in this franchise of a franchise, often seem to be collateral damage. Whereas with the Alien, it's the actual task in hand. Remember Ash's description in Alien. Its structural perfection is matched only by its hostility. I admire its purity. We're also probably predisposed to find some humanity in a creature with arms, legs, and a head where we'd expect them, like a Fields version of pareidolia, where one's brain sees familiar patterns and faces in something non-human or inanimate. This is a bleak and dark, in both senses, film, set to a soundtrack of predator growls, alien squeals, and the screams of humans. And while this is not a good movie by any stretch of the imagination, it does have an impressive determination not to be waylaid by sentimentality. A boy in a forest sees his dad's arm lopped off with acid. At one point, the alien is seen breathing heavily over a row of adorable newborns, swaddled and wearing little hats in their clear plastic cots in the hospital nursery. Soon after, a small ward of pregnant women are impregnated. We actually see the eggs pushed down one victim's throat, later to be found cocooned but still alive. As the film ends with a nuclear explosion flattening the town and the countryside around it, and as only a small group escape in the hospital's only helicopter, I think we can assume the babies didn't survive. I really enjoyed Alien vs. Predator, the first film in the crossover franchise where the two species who have done battle for centuries fight to the death in an underground pyramid. And while social media can do a lot of harm, I will always be grateful that Twitter allowed me to find the very few other people who agree with me. The same is true of Prometheus, though, if I'm honest, there are probably more Alien vs. Predator fans. This movie starts with the injured predator from the previous film being returned to his home planet in a predator ship. But he's carrying an alien cargo inside him. What bursts forth is part alien and part predator, a predalien. And once the craft crashes back down to Earth in the Colorado forests, no one is safe. First to be attacked are a man and his young son out hunting. Soon the xenomorphs which burst forth from their bodies are grown and in the sewers, then the town. But a dying predator sends a distress signal back to his home planet, and a predator warrior arrives on Earth to destroy the aliens. The locals have no idea what they're up against, though many are at least armed. And they have Kelly, Reiko Aylesworth, just back from a tour of duty in the Army, and tying to reconnect with her young daughter Molly, who's been at home with Dad for the duration. Also trying to survive are just-out-of-jail Dallas Stephen Pasquale and his brother Ricky, Johnny Lewis, who works as a pizza delivery boy. He's in love with his beautiful classmate Jessie, Kristen Hager, and is bullied by her boyfriend and his friends. There are a few fun scenes, even though they're predictable. Little Molly claims to have seen a monster through her window at bedtime. Both parents give her a mini lecture about monsters not being real before Dad approaches the window and is promptly killed. Later, the final group are arguing over whether to go to the hospital and escape in its helicopter or follow the Army's orders and head to the center of town to await the airlift. Some are convinced it's a trap to leave them exposed to the aliens so the government can contain the outbreak. "That's crazy. The government doesn't lie to people," says one, as the others look at her in utter astonishment. The imagery is a rather unpleasant mix of motherhood and sexual violence. Watching a pregnant woman lying in hospital having a huge appendage forced down her throat is nasty. When the victim's abdomen bursts open to reveal several alien babies, mouths opening and closing, they look like a blood-soaked group of baby birds in a nest, just hatched and chirping for the first time. One of the great themes of what we could call the uninfected alien movies, by which I mean the non-crossover ones, is the idea of two mothers, Ripley and the alien queen, fighting to the death to protect their young. Neither fit feminine ideals, but both also behave how we expect mothers to at the most primal level, protecting their offspring. Aliens vs. Predator Requiem utilizes these ideas but doesn't say anything important or interesting about them. Horror and sci-fi can still be fun or scary without allegories and deeper meanings, so it's unfortunate that this movie falls down here too. And that's mainly because it's almost impossible to see what's going on. And if you can't identify an individual among the mass of threatened townspeople, it's hard to care what happens to them. The film is just so dark. It's nighttime, the power goes off, and even the hospital only has emergency lighting. The darkness and the juddering, jumping around shots mean it is really difficult to work out what is going on. Sometimes the only light seems to be the shine on an alien shell, the acid dripping from its jaws, or occasional splashes of color as the predator's heat-seeking vision lights up fleeing humans with orange and blue. Less confusing cinematography would have made the film more enjoyable and scary. And as I've spoilered the ending, I might as well tell you who survives. The Predator and Predalien fight on to the death in the hospital. As the helicopter takes off, we know Kelly has to survive, as they tell us that earlier. She's the only one who can fly it. Safe-ish inside are Kelly, Molly, Dallas, and Ricky, which means rip Jessie. Think of all the free pizza Ricky could have got you if you'd survived. Abandon all hope, ye who enter a movie theater that is showing Aliens vs. Predator Requiem. It's that bad. I kid you not. As first-time directors, the brothers Strauss, as they are referred to in the credits, are great visual effects guys. Honestly, I'm having a hard time coming up with ways to tell you just how depressingly awful this movie is, but I'll do my best. Within minutes of the start of the film, I was bored and my mind started to wander. It opens aboard a Predator ship, where a dead comrade is presumably being transported to the home world directly after the events of the last film. An alien bursts forth from the dead Predator, shortly taking out the entire crew and crashing the ship on Earth. Immediately, I wondered just how this could happen so easily. In the last film, the premise was that predators had been using Antarctica as the location for a rite of passage or training ground for predators. For many years, was it centuries, the predator race had been doing this very thing. So how is it that they could be so oblivious to the possibility that a dead comrade might be home to a gestating alien? How is it that one alien was able to take down the crew of a predator ship? These guys are hunters, right? So easily? Once the ship crashes, one of the mortally injured predators manages to send a distress call, which is Pi, cucked up by an elder on their homeworld. It was marginally cool to get a glimpse of their world, but that's about it. He heads out for destination Earth. Once the story cuts to the residents of the small town, it gets even worse. We meet a variety of characters whose lives will clumsily come together as the movie progresses. We have an inexperienced and inept sheriff, the rebel criminal brother of a local teen who comes back to town, that teen lusting after the local hottie who is dating a jerk bully. We also have Rachel Aylesworth as Kelly, a mom returning home after some unspecified amount of time to an estranged little girl and stay-at-home dad. The whole role reversal thing here creeped me out a bit for some reason. She is probably the only person in the entire film who demonstrated any acting ability above what you might see in a high school play. We don't really care about what happens to any of the characters, despite the weak attempts at trying to connect the audience with them. Oh, who cares about the acting, right? You want to see this for the action. Well, I'm sorry to report that 90% of the time the scenes were shot in such a way that between the low lighting, rain, extreme close-ups, and quick cuts, you can't even tell what the hell is going on. Nor do you care much, as the whole thing seems assembled with less reason for being than a video game plot. Then there were the really vile bits, like aliens invading a hospital and finding easy hosts for their little ones. Beyond the idea of using the sick and helpless for this were a couple of scenes in the maternity ward where a woman who is going into labor is attacked by an alien and has eggs deposited inside her in a repulsive manner. No, not that, but it was still disgusting. Seriously, if I wasn't going to review this, I was so bored and disinterested, I would have walked out 20 minutes in. It seems that my initial reactions to AVPR turned out to be right after all. Of late, I had been getting cautiously optimistic that there might be some chance that this would actually redeem the first, but it's actually worse. While I gave the first on only 1.5 stars, at least it got to be a bit of fun in the second half, but this one is almost completely without any value. There were a couple of very brief moments that were cool between the Pred-alien and the Predator, but I'd count those at no more than maybe 2 or 3 eye-blink moments, tops. I know the Strauss brothers are big fans of both franchises and had good intentions, but Aliens vs. Predator Requiem proves that being a big movie fan does not necessarily mean that you can make a good movie. Folks, seriously, don't bother. This thing is going to tank hard at the box office, and if you see it anyway, don't come crying to me because you have been warned. Just as Predators is the bleak Ginger Rogers to the original's perpetually flexing Fred Astaire, Aliens vs. Predator Requiem is the community theater riff on AVP. There's a bunch of great ideas here, but in every case, they're either sabotaged by the direction or damaged by the passage of linear time. Requiem follows, notionally, Kelly O'Brien, played by Rachel Aylesworth. A soldier, freshly back from a tour, Kelly is looking forward to settling back in with her husband, a pre-True Blood Sam Trammell, and child. Dallas Howard, Stephen Pasquale, is also back in town, but his tour was behind bars rather than overseas. Both arrive at the same time as the ship from AVP crashes nearby. On board is Scar's dead body and the alien hatching within it, one which has Predator DNA. And right away, there's your problem. The Alien franchise was never more creatively lost than during the long, unlovable period where it decided the alien was kind of sort of a chimera that took on genetic aspects of its host. Big chunks of Alien 3 toyed with this. It would become central to Alien Resurrection and, God help us, Covenant, and it never once played as anything other than a cheap way to add more drama. Worse, here it takes the unnecessary, or eyes it, ending of AVP and builds on it in the most obvious way possible with the Pred-alien. Worse still, it turns what should be a chimeric and horrifying bastardization of 2 icons into a MacGuffin with 2 sets of jaws. That in turn leads to the worst moment, arguably, in both franchises, where the Pred-alien impregnates a maternity ward worth of women with both a terrible metaphor and a tedious plot development. And the weird thing is most of this would be fine if you could ever see the bloody thing. The brothers Strauss seem to have decided to embrace the combined aesthetics of the 2 franchises a little closely, meaning basically the entire movie happens at night in either forests or industrial facilities. It doesn't really matter because basically nothing here is easy to see or follow. Initially, that presents as an aesthetic choice. After a while, you get the sneaking suspicion that it's cover-up the 2 men in monster suits carefully hitting one another. That's what kills the movie. The action should be innovative and easy to follow, and it's sometimes the first and never the second. Shane Salerno's script is short on characters but massive on big, fun ideas. Even the Pred-alien should work, and the bits that do, Death Frisbee, Wolf, make it through still have to battle the foggy, dour production style to be seen. If it's an aesthetic choice, it's too far. If it's a budgetary choice, it's way too obvious. Which is such a shame because there's a fun movie struggling to be seen here. Wolf, the veteran predator sent to clean up the mess, is especially fun. Likewise, the idea of having twin protagonists meet in the middle is flat out great. But neither Dallas or Kelly quite land as anything other than parts of the plot that happen to have dialogue. You want to care, but at no point does the film let you. And that's a particular shame when you get to the end of Act 2 and the genuine surprise that waits there. This is a film with absolutely its fair share of good ideas. It just never lands them. The film opens with a montage of sights and sounds from both franchises, heralding a return to the form, if not content, that fans have loved for decades. The deep, resonating brass of James Horner's Aliens score, the tribal percussion of his Predator theme, and the font of both series' credit sequences. From there, AVPR picks up where the original film left off, following a group of predators as they return to their homeworld. Because one of the survivors was impregnated with an alien embryo, the resulting creature possesses characteristics of both species, forming a predalien. The ensuing struggle to defeat the monster results in the ship crash landing back on Earth. After a human hunter and his young son discover the vessel, they are impregnated by facehuggers and left to gestate normal aliens. But when a scout from the Predator homeworld discovers that the ship crashed, he departs for Earth to track down the creatures and rescue the survivors. What soon ensues is a violent battle for supremacy writ large against the backdrop of a small Midwestern town. Soon, a small band of survivors race to evade death and dismemberment at the hands of either race, and escape the town before the incoming military provides its own solution, namely, to destroy any and all who have come into contact with the alien races. There's a reason I barely mentioned any of the human characters in the film. They aren't important. Screenwriter Shane Salerno, Armageddon, seems to be fully aware that we care little or nothing about who these people are or what they want, so he provides each of the main characters with only the most threadbare of backstories, and then releases them to fend off their infinitely better equipped extraterrestrial adversaries. There's a guy named Dallas, Stephen Pasquale, who was recently released from prison and who is trying to save his younger brother Ricky, Johnny Lewis, from a similar fate. A soldier named Kelly, Reiko Aylesworth, trying to reconnect with her daughter Molly, Ariel Gade, after returning home from Iraq, and a doofus sheriff named Morales, John Ortiz, who is trying to manage this catastrophe as it escalates out of his control. Predictably, most viewers will assign these characters numbers rather than names because it's an easier way to keep track of how many of them get killed and how often. But thankfully, directors Colin and Greg Strauss keep the story, such as it is, moving at a quick enough pace that deficiencies in character development or general logic mostly go unnoticed. Additionally, they employ a preponderance of practical effects, that is, dudes in rubber suits, to give the creatures tangible dimensions. The growing use of computer-generated effects to shortcut the filmmaking process has in recent years produced the unfortunate but perhaps expected side effect of decreased believability. But the brothers Strauss construct enough realistic situations and then populate them with actual monsters to make sure that the audience feels and reacts as if they exist. At the same time, this film shares with its predecessor the problem that neither the aliens nor the predators, but the humans are its focus. Admittedly, Salerno and co. surpass the first AVP by reducing the humans' emotional significance and emphasizing the main predator's one-man battle against the alien hordes, and then later the predalien, a wet dream of a final villain for some future video game spin-off. But the film's unwillingness to simply relegate the humans as collateral damage in this interstellar grudge match shows that somebody somewhere thought at some point we would actually be invested in anything other than the action. Meanwhile, I'm more interested in precisely why the predator is hunting these creatures. Mind you, I'm not questioning motivation in any serious or critical way, but throughout the movie I was far more curious about the predator's quest. It isn't coming of age, as were the predators in the first film, than the efforts of a few puny humans to escape being brained or otherwise dismembered. That said, such concerns of extremely minor importance, since the ultimate point is to make money and maintain interest in two franchises, which, even separately, had long since burned out even their most committed fans. In fact, the film's compilation of reference points, visual cues, and familiar sound effects resembles something strikingly different than any real or legitimate compendium of science fiction mythology or lore. Rather, it seems more like a ransom note cut and pasted from the remnants of other, and presumably better texts. Ultimately, the film is competently executed, occasionally scary and frequently fun to watch, no matter whether you choose to laugh at or with it. All of which means that the greatest accomplishment that may come from Aliens vs. Predator Requiem is that as far as the future of the series is concerned, this definitely and reassuringly constitutes proof of life. Although I'm ashamed to say I was drunk when I saw Aliens vs. Predator at the cinema, well, at least I had fun, I've been assured that it isn't much more fun when sober. A clumsy cut and shut of two trusty franchises directed by a true cinematic hack, it took a great concept, pit two of the baddest alien motherfuckers in the universe against one another, and somehow made it duller than a bent spoon. The sequel never really looked like faring better. When Paul W.S. Anderson has better things to do, you know you're onto a loser. So it's no surprise to report that Aliens vs. Predator Requiem is an equally vacant affair. Brainless, wasteful, and likely to be enjoyed considerably more when viewed in an alcoholic stupor. Following on immediately from the finale of its predecessor, in which an alien inexplicably bursts from the chest of a dead predator, we're witness to the birth of a baffling new beast, the Predalien. Yep, the bastard love child of sci-fi's greatest monsters is on the loose, complete with mommy's teeth and daddy's dreadlocks, and causes the predator ship to crash land on Earth. There, both species proceed to ass-blast any fleshy human stereotypes, mysterious loner, small-town sheriff, hot blonde, etc., that get in their way. It won't take long before you realize the pretentiously named directors, the brothers Strauss, have screwed the pooch. The present-day Earth setting is an astoundingly mundane backdrop for what should be a titanic intergalactic smackdown, betraying the exotic origins of both creatures in order to awkwardly shoehorn them into a standard slasher template. Out go the trademark tense set pieces that are typical of both franchises. In come a number of bog-standard boo scares, including the customary window frightener and a scene in which a xenomorph terrorizes some sexy teens in a swimming pool. Nice going, geniuses. Way to drag the coolest futuristic monsters ever into the crappy present. If this was a simple slasher movie, then it'd be instantly forgettable. But a film with such prestige needs to be so much more than throwaway nonsense. There's literally limitless potential with these franchises. Dollars to donuts, I could find better fan fiction online in 10 minutes. But AVPR steadfastly sticks to its depressingly familiar setup. One early tantalizing glimpse of the Predator homeworld does raise a little interest, but simply begs the question: how much better would this movie have been set there instead? AVPR adds nothing to the mythos of either franchise, aside from a ridiculously OTT final line that comes across a desperate attempt to gain some much-needed credibility. Aside from a few neat sequences scattered throughout, the sewer showdown is undeniably cool, and one cast member's carks it in truly memorable fashion. Aliens vs. Predator Requiem is a pale imitation of its many predecessors, so much so it'll make you embarrassed to be a fan. This is how a new generation of film lovers will grow up knowing these iconic creations. Alien and Predator have been repackaged and remarketed to a new, younger, stupider generation. One who demand gore, loud music, and nothing else. Why does every fight scene have to be spliced into nanosecond cuts, swathed in darkness and drenched in rain? Are we expected to give three shits about some lame-brained love story? Christ, we're old. It finally happened. If this is what the future holds for both franchises, then today's youngsters are welcome to it. We'll keep our images of Ripley in the power loader and Jesse Ventura cutting down the rainforest, and you can keep your identikit teens in mild peril. AVPR is a pitiful puppet show, A pair of inept directors have been allowed to slip their hands up the arses of both creatures and have made them dance to their sorry tune. Kids may enjoy the show, but the rest of us are better off sticking to the past to get our future sci-fi kicks. Hell, I'll drink to that. First, I'd like to state that I'm a pretty big fan of both Alien and Predator. I was part of that vocal minority that felt an AVP movie should definitely be rated R. I'm looking at you, Paul W.S. Anderson. So when Fox announced that we would be getting an R-rated Alien vs. Predator film because of the fans, in Aliens vs. Predator Requiem, I was pretty damn excited. That excitement quickly faded after I saw the movie. I get that this film is a modern B-movie, but that's no excuse for what was made. The film follows the events of 2004's Alien vs. Predator. We see a Predator ship leaving Earth carrying alien facehuggers and the body of Scar, the Predator that defeated the alien queen. A chestbuster bursts from Scar's body, and it's revealed to be a hybrid of both species, a Pred-alien. Chaos ensues on the ship, and it heads back to Earth, a small town in Colorado, to be exact. You know, when I saw this film in the theater when I was 17, I never really gave it much thought, but I watched it again the other night and just couldn't really fathom how a massive spaceship crashes into a forest and not a single person notices. Looking past that, we then shift focus to a father and son hunting, who technically were the only ones to notice the giant fucking spaceship, and they're both mutilated by facehuggers who promptly eat their faces off. They also spread into the sewers of that small Colorado town and do the same to homeless people living in a sewer. Predator gets out of the ship, starts fighting the Pred-aliens that are wreaking havoc, and mass chaos ensues. Fast forward to ex-convict Dallas Howard, played by some guy I've never heard of, returning to his city after serving time in prison. He reunites with his brother Ricky, played by a younger guy I've never heard of, who is dealing with bullying from a bunch of very generic douchebags due to his interest in his classmate, and very generic teen Jessie, played by an actress I've never heard of, who is dating one of the generic douchebags. Kelly O'Brien, Reiko Aylesworth, is added in as a woman returning home from the military to be reunited with her husband. It's a subplot that doesn't really add anything and ends up being pointless in the end. I wasn't really surprised, though, given the lack of character development throughout the film. Let's take a moment to talk about the quality acting in this film. Every actor and actress seems as if they were hired off of the street for a few bucks and not given a copy of the script. Then again, there probably wasn't a script to begin with, as her husband is decapitated in front of her and her daughter, and they just up and run out of the house and into the middle of the road rather than getting in a vehicle. Personally, I think that's what we would all do if there was a giant predator-alien hybrid running around and he just ate our spouse. We'd run outside and into the middle of the road, not behind some bushes or anything, the middle of the fucking road. It's the first feature film for the brothers Strauss, and it definitely shows. Every single fight scene between Predator and Alien is almost in pitch black and looks as if they just decided to cut lighting out of the budget of this movie. You literally cannot see what is going on. As anyone who's suffered through the horror of Police Academy, Mission to Moscow knows, it's not uncommon for movie franchises to lurch downhill. But the Alien, and to a much lesser extent the Predator, franchise has really pulled off a trick. From the majesty of Ridley Scott and James Cameron's episodes, each entry has been almost exponentially worse than the last, to the point where this witless, joyless, pointless mashup makes its predecessor, Paul W.S. Anderson's Alien vs. Predator, look Oscar-worthy. And that's not so much lurching downhill as it is plummeting off a cliff. Anyone who watched Cameron's Aliens might feel that there is a terrifying movie to be made about what happens in between the first facehugger attack and the point where aliens overrun the town, but AVP sure isn't it. Instead, what we get is Hollyoaks vs. Predator, as a group of annoying, one-dimensional teens spend almost as time moping about love and, ludicrously, lost keys as they do getting their heads punched through by snapping xenomorph jaws. Directors, the brothers Strauss, Colin and Greg, apparently got the gig there first because they're such huge Alien and Predator fanboys. AVP would indicate that they're fanboys of the ain't it cool talkback variety, guileless goons crowbarring in lame references, The hero is called Dallas. Someone actually says, "Get to the chopper," while emphasizing splatter and swearing over the suspenseful slow burn. Of course, both Alien and Predator were stalk-and-slash pictures disguised as sci-fi movies, but AVP comes on like a Friday the 13th sequel, where the emphasis is placed squarely on spectacular kills, including a nasty and distasteful sequence set in a maternity ward that may just be the nadir of both franchises to date. Apart from a frustratingly brief glimpse of the Predator homeworld and one cool AVP face-off in a sewer, the creatures remain resoundingly undeveloped. In fact, this Predator is so astoundingly stupid. It covers up all traces of aliens with a bright blue liquid that disintegrates everything, yet never uses it as a weapon, then draws attention to itself by skinning humans, that it seems there might be a purpose after all for the highfalutin title, and that this film is a requiem after all, a requiem for two once great movie monsters, now defanged, neutered, and buried by a couple of hacks named Colin and Greg. After an alien bursts from the chest of a dead predator, its spacecraft crashes into the woods outside a small American town. When a number of facehuggers emerge from the wreckage and begin impregnating the humans, another predator arrives to clean up the mess. For the unsuspecting humans in Gunnison, Colorado, it means a long night of violence and terror as they run around like panicky kittens trying to survive. After Paul W.S. Anderson directed Alien vs. Predator and earned 20th Century Fox a tidy profit, it seemed as if the studio had a pulp B-grade movie franchise on its hands. After one sequel directed by visual effects specialists Colin and Greg Strauze, Alien vs. Predator was stone-cold dead, with each property splitting back off into its respective franchise. It was not a matter of money. Alien vs. Predator Requiem turned a reasonable profit. It is simply as if the relevant executives at Fox saw where their combined film series was headed and simply broke it up before too much damage was done. Alien and Alien Resurrection both came out on the receiving end of fairly harsh criticism, but at the same time, both had their respective fans. The same can be said of Alien vs. Predator to a large extent. It cannot be said of Alien vs. Predator Requiem. At the time of writing, the critics of Rotten Tomatoes have given it an aggregated score of 12%. General viewers, usually more forgiving, still only rate it at 30%. That's while giving AVP and Resurrection 39%. No Alien film is less popular than Requiem. Whether a critic, a fan, or a disinterested bystander, nothing in the franchise is as bad as this. Alien vs. Predator Requiem, often shortened to AVPR, is not a good film. There is no hidden, underappreciated gem to be found. There's no curate's egg. It is a failure for two pretty obvious reasons. Firstly, and more than any other film of the 10, it works as a haphazard greatest hits package of scenes, dialogue, action beats, and camera angles from Alien, Aliens, and Predator. There is very little at work that is original to the franchise in any way. I wrote very little. And that leads to the second critical flaw of the film. What few new elements that are introduced are very poorly considered. For one thing, the film relocates the action for the first time to a small town in contemporary America. The aliens in particular do not work in this sort of environment. They come across as silly and vaguely ridiculous. It might almost work if the film attempted a sort of self-aware, light-hearted tone. But instead, the brothers Strauss go for a deadly serious vibe from beginning to end. Not only have they made something audiences cannot enjoy, they do not even allow audiences to laugh at it. The other main creation for the film is what was referred to as the Predalien, an alien burst from the chest of a predator. It's taller than the average alien, which is sort of cool. It has larger claws and predator-like mandibles, which also works quite well. It retains the predator's dreadlock-like tentacles, which look ridiculous and pretty much spoil the design of the whole creature. It also impregnates victims directly, latching onto their faces with its mandibles and pumping alien embryos into their stomachs with a big, hollow tongue. That concept has a disgusting sort of potential, but the brothers only employ the attack on women in the film, and in all but one case on pregnant women, which makes it all feel like a vile kind of deliberately gendered violence. There is a lot of violence in the film. Earlier Alien and Predator films did not ignore blood and gore, but it was used rather sparingly with more shocks and scares based around dark, creepy corridors and barely glimpsed monsters. AVPR goes to town with blood effects, including acid blood melting off faces, chests and stomachs bursting open, arms being dismembered, and heads exploding. It is excessive enough to simply feel sensationalistic and tacky. As with the small town setting, it could potentially work with a more self-aware tone, but we fail to get it. The characters are uniformly generic and dull, akin to the teenage cast of an average Friday the 13th movie. They die one by one in a variety of sudden and violent manners. In a slasher flick, this sort of violence forms part of the package, but here the film lacks an entertaining slasher like a Jason Voorhees or a Freddy Krueger. A mob of insectoid monsters simply does not suffice. Once the action picks up, the film remains so ridiculously boring that the best thing to do is play spot the homage. One character urges another to get to the chopper. The predator gets wounded and has to use a field medicine kit. The aliens all shriek like the ones in Aliens. There's an escape from a nuclear explosion in a helicopter. One action sequence sees a group of Marines get torn to shreds by a group of aliens that is effectively a shot-to-shot remake of Aliens. It even has the armored personnel carrier, the banks of shoulder-mounted camera feeds, and James Horner's score sewn in. The film is 94 minutes long. It has half-decent scene at the very end that foreshadows a vastly superior sequel we never got to see. Future Alien and Predator films never managed to capture the appeal of the originals, but they were at least more watchable than this. AVPR is without question the worst that these franchises ever got. What's worse than witnessing the deterioration of a beloved franchise? Seeing two disintegrate at the same time. Such was the feeling of watching 2004's lazy Paul W.S. Anderson effort, Alien vs. Predator. So it was with a heavy, betrayal-filled heart that I signed on for this next installment, Aliens vs. Predator Requiem. While this randomly named entry has none of the style or thrill of its source material, and a plot that amounts to little more than Friday the 13th with Aliens, Requiem is a slightly more respectable attempt to save these two flagging franchises from the dustbin. Picking up scant seconds after AVP left off, the script by Shane Salerno sets up its premise with the expediency of a good graphic novel. As you'll no doubt recall, the Predator ship had left Earth with a little surprise on board in the form of a newly born alien-predator hybrid. Faster than you can say facehugger, the newborn alien causes enough mayhem to crash the ship in a remote Colorado forest, perfect for a self-contained alien feeding frenzy. Enter our human fodder in the form of Stephen Pasquale from Rescue Me, a dead ringer for Cole Hauser, for what that's worth. The filmmakers have the gumption to name this character Dallas, in a direct reference to Tom Skerritt's memorable role in the original Alien. Dallas has a younger brother named Ricky who's having some trouble with bullies at school. This allows Mr. Salerno's script to get Dallas and Ricky into the sewer in attempt to find the car keys that said bullies threw down there. I'll bet you can see where that scene goes. Johnny Lewis does some surprisingly fine work as Ricky, rising above the usual B-level acting required in these films. Mr. Lewis resembles a young Noah Weil, and he has an unexpected intensity. Watching his performance is reminiscent of seeing a young Johnny Depp in A Nightmare on Elm Street or Jennifer Aniston in Leprechaun. This may not be the last we see of this actor. Reiko Aylesworth, Michelle Dessler from 24, channeling her inner Sigourney, also shows up as some kind of war vet, handy to have around in these situations. Where the first AVP featured many of both species, perhaps it should have been called Aliens vs. Predators, Requiem lives up to its name. While the aliens quickly multiply, they'll do that and overrun the town. It's up to one lone predator to clean up the mess, in some cases literally via a magic blue liquid that dissolves aliens dead. As is becoming the norm, the filmmakers play fast and loose with the alien life cycle. Again, the facehugger chestburster combo takes mere minutes, and there's some particularly weird, pointless, and unexplained violence in a maternity ward. I'm happy the filmmakers went for a hard R, a mistake that cost the first AVP much of its cred, but this pregnancy angle is just plain unnecessary. The direction by Colin and Greg Strauss is rudimentary at best. Coming from the world of visual effects, the brothers Straussy, as they like to be called, spend more time setting up the gore than setting up a scene. Happily, the Predator mask is vastly improved from the last time out, But the few true Alien vs. Predator smackdowns we see, and we don't see enough, are almost too dark and noisy to comprehend. There is one truly memorable sequence in Requiem, which gives us a cursory glance at the Predator home planet and dares to attempt to relate it to the derelict spacecraft from the original Alien. This is the kind of thing we need to see more of. The original Alien and Predator films featured two of the richest and most memorable sci-fi monsters to be put on screen in the past 3 decades. Why then is it so difficult to make a good movie from this wealth of material? The script takes great pains to preserve the integrity of the timelines of both series, but it's getting harder and harder to believe humans had no record of encountering these species. If another AVP is made, and I'd be the first online, as always, it might be best to set it in a galaxy far, far away. Now, there's an idea for a series. The violence the monsters inflict doesn't hold the same weight. Without the red human blood, it also isn't a scary movie, and thus doesn't live up to the promise of the two franchises. None of the characters are particularly memorable, and I do find the second half of the film to be pretty boring. However, I do think that the creatures are given time to shine, and that should honestly be the most important thing. Extra information, I had forgotten about the existence of this film when I began this viewing, so I technically lied about Predator 2 causing a 20-year lapse. It was only 14. Our film this time takes the bold, stupid, new, totally corporate direction of making it PG-13. I guess they assumed everyone developed Benjamin Button syndrome and went back in age. So now they would want a PG-13 version of the film. It is hard to even know where to start on this one. We follow a team of meat shields as they travel to a recently discovered pyramid under the Arctic. Lance Henriksen makes an appearance, but he's clearly slumming as the finer and main link to the Alien franchise. We get some other non-CH characters, but I honestly couldn't tell any of them apart long enough to give a... We have some scientists, a guide, some other scientists, some dick corporate guys, some drillers, and a whole bunch of people who are only there to die with no blood anyway. The Predators are trying to breed the ultimate prey. So they come every 100 years to fight aliens, though it seems like they usually lose and have to detonate their atomic bombs. This begs the question of how stupid are the Predators? The main threat of the alien race seems to be their vicious, infectious race 8s and how easily they can multiply. They do seem slightly toughened up here to go toe-to-toe with the Predators, but the Predators also seem dumb. I think this is the biggest problem, both monsters. I know they are both aliens, but I don't feel like writing xenomorph over and over. No. Idea why, so I am just going to call them monsters seem efficient at slaughtering humans, but the Predators get their asses kicked pretty quick by the aliens. Granted, they don't have their guns for stupid reasons, and this seems to be the best way to deal with the aliens. We also never address the sheer idiocy of breeding a race that can so easily spread. The Predators are never presented as stupid, but this seems drastically short-sighted. Do the humans matter? Not really. Too many of them are slaughtered too quickly to matter at all. There also isn't really a distinguishing factor about them. One dude has kids, another has a bottle cap, but then he becomes a badass over the guide who was hired for being a badass. And that all seemed kind of dumb. I tried to pay more attention to the characters, but whenever they talked, all I could hear was insects chirping. The tragedy of this one is that there are some good moments when the Predators and aliens brawl. There is some excitement to be had. These moments are fun, but too far apart, and too short-lived to earn the film's title. The set design of the abandoned whaling village is great. I enjoyed these scenes, but once we are in the temple, it just becomes dark. Rooms with stone-laden angles all over. Likewise, the Predators still look cool, and the alien queen looks great. However, we don't get enough of them. I think if you cut the scenes without either an alien or a Predator, you'd have about 30 minutes left, maybe. Too much time is spent with our idiot humans. I don't care about these people, because I know in this sort of film, they are all just fodder to the meat grinder. We also have forced conflict as the lead guide, S.A. Aileen, I forgot her character's name, and the one listed on IMDb, rings no bells. Mind you, I just watched the movie. Wants to spend more time preparing the team. However, any concerns of ill preparation evaporate as it becomes clear that there is no preparation for getting into the middle of an epic battle. What these characterizations were designed to do completely fails. Instead of building up the characters, it showcases the ill-conceived nature of them. The original Predator had a sense of humor, and the original Alien had a sense of wonder. Neither of those features are present here, and instead we are left with a messy action flick that does no service to either franchise. At this point, both series seem to be in rough waters, so why anyone would combine them is beyond me in the long-held, but rather tacky tradition of monster face-offs such as Godzilla vs. King 1962, Freddy vs. Jason 2003, and Gareth vs. Well, the big question is, do we really want another one? The fanboys would say a definite yes. 2. Alien vs. Predator. At the ending of the dismal Predator 2 1990, the camera trolled the trophy room of the movie's chief beastie, highlighting an alien skull within in its midst rather than see it as just a nice-in joke. The Inara howled with delight and embraced the notion of an alien SL Predator punch-up, so much so that, to meet the demand, there has been comic stories and computer games, all of which have been very successful. It was inevitable that a movie version would soon follow. 20th Century Fox, owner of both the flagging Alien and Stillborn Predator franchises, saw a way to turn their fortunes around. And it worked. Alien vs. Predator proved a financial success, taking around $171 million worldwide. It led to rumors at the time of there being an Alien 5 and Alien vs. Predator 2, with just the laters so far having been filmed. And now for the bad news, Alien vs. Predator is awful, absolutely diabolical, without doubt the biggest waste of space I have seen on the big screen for a long while. So what's it about, and does anyone care? A satellite picks up what looks like a pyramid and an Aztec temple under the ice when corporation, that's the bad, guys in the Alien franchise, sends in a team of unwritten characters to investigate. It soon appears that the human non-entities are the bait they are used to provide bodies to host new aliens for a battle that takes place every 100 years between the screeching xenomorphs and the giant uglies with Randy Crawford hair. Shusett. Sounds promising, but believe me, it is far from it. The female lead has confused looking feisty with looking constipated, and she is meant to be the character we engage with. It doesn't work. I wanted to slap her a lot. The script is jaw-droppingly dire, leaving an equally naff cast little to do except scream a couple more beers beforehand would have made the viewing more bearable. No, make that loads more from the slow emo. Bullet time shot of a facehugger launching onto a rocket wannabe to the big scrap out in the frozen wastes. Alien vs. Predator stinks from every pore. It also chucks in the most appalling ending to a movie ever to complete the experience. Still, at least they got the aliens to look better than they did in Alien 3 1992 and Alien Resurrection 1997, but that's about all they got, right? And it was over very quickly. This film, directed by Paul W.S. Anderson. Screenplay by Paul W.S. Anderson, story by Paul W.S. Anderson, Dan Onan Ronald, produced by John Davis, Gordon Carroll, David Giler, Walter Hill, starring Sonal and Paul B. Lance Henriksen, Jan Bremner, cinematography, David Johnson, edited by Alexander Berner, music by Harold Closer Production Companies, Davis Entertainment, Brandywine Productions, Impact Pictures, Still King Films, distributed by 20th Century Fox. Release states August 12, 2004 in international, August 13th, 2004. In United States, running time 100 minutes, countries United States, United Kingdom, Czech Republic, Germany, Canada, language English, budget 60 to 70 million, box office 7740.